If you clicked on this video, you probably want to or are interested in moving to Texas. No state income tax, housing cheaper than New York or California, a booming job market. The math looks obvious. A lot of people have run it and decided the same thing. Between 2020 and 2023, Texas ranked among the top 2 states in the country for people moving in, and by 2023 had more net arrivals than any other state. What most of them didn't account for is what comes after the income tax line. Let's start with housing, because that's usually what makes Texas look like a deal. In June 2019, the median home in Austin sold for $374,000. 3 years later, in June 2022, the same median home sold for $635,000. Texas home prices jumped 70% in just 3 years. Why? Millions of people moved there from expensive cities, and their bigger budgets drove prices up fast. Austin has since cooled. Prices are back down to around $542,000, but that's still 45% above where they were before the migration wave hit. Dallas and Houston have followed similar curves, with statewide median prices about 40% higher now than in 2019. Those who moved to Texas in 2018 for affordable housing got it. The people moving now are buying into a market that has already absorbed most of that advantage, at interest rates significantly higher than the ones that drove the boom. That's the housing pitch. It lands differently depending on when you showed up. The no-income tax argument is real. If you earn $150,000 a year in California, the state takes around 9% of that. In New York, around 6%. In Texas, 0%. What Texas has instead is a property tax rate that ranks 9th highest in the country, ahead of both New York and California. The effective rate on residential property is about 1.58% of the home's assessed value every year, regardless of income. On a $500,000 home, that's $7,900 annually. On a $600,000 home in Austin, it's around $9,500. That bill arrives every year, whether the economy is good or not, whether you had a strong year at work or not, whether you're retired or not. California's effective property tax rate is 0.71%, less than half of Texas's. A California homeowner on a $600,000 property pays around $4,260 a year. A Texas homeowner on the same value pays more than double that. The income tax saving is real. The property tax bill tends to eat most of it, especially on the kind of home that costs above the median in Austin or Dallas, which is most of them. On top of that, Texas has one of the highest sales tax rates in the country at 8.25% in every major city. Groceries, car repairs, furniture, it all hits that rate. Sales tax takes a bigger bite from people spending most of their paycheck than from people who can save a portion of it. The households most attracted by the no-income tax pitch often end up paying the most through the sales tax. Most people moving to Texas factor in the mortgage, the property tax, and maybe a rough estimate of utilities. The number that tends to surprise them is insurance. Texas homeowners pay an average of around $4,900 a year for homeowners insurance, roughly double the national average, and among the highest of any major state. Since 2019, the median Texas homeowner has seen their premium rise 60%. The reason is weather. Texas experiences more billion-dollar disaster events than any other state, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Hurricanes on the Gulf Coast, hailstorms along the I-35 corridor from Dallas to San Antonio, tornadoes across North Texas, wildfires in the Hill Country and Panhandle. In 2024 alone, hail damage in Texas totaled nearly $5 billion. Insurance companies price that history into every renewal. Coastal homeowners carry an additional problem. A standard homeowner's policy in Texas doesn't cover hurricane wind damage in coastal counties. Those homeowners buy a separate wind policy through the Texas Windstorm Insurance Association, and then a third policy for flooding, which no standard policy covers anywhere. 3 separate premiums, 3 separate deductibles for a single house. Someone moving from the Midwest or Northeast, where a single policy covers most weather events at a national average of around $2,400 a year, is looking at roughly double that bill the moment they sign a Texas mortgage. Texas runs its own power grid. The Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT, operates independently from the national grid, a deliberate choice that lets the state avoid federal energy regulation. For most of Texas's history, that independence was a point of pride. In February 2021, Winter Storm Uri arrived. Temperatures dropped below freezing across the state. Power plants, natural gas, coal, wind, nuclear, began failing because they hadn't been built to operate in extreme cold. ERCOT came within 4 minutes and 37 seconds of a complete grid failure that could have left the state dark for weeks. More than 4.5 million homes lost power. At least 246 people died. Some residents opened their electricity bill after the storm and found charges of $15,000 for 5 days of power. That was legal in Texas because the state runs its own deregulated electricity market outside federal oversight, where prices can float with demand. The cost of the crisis didn't end when the storm did. Texas ratepayers were left with roughly $37.7 billion in electricity charges from the week of the storm, a portion of which was financed through bonds that are still being paid off through fees added to monthly electricity bills. The state knew about the grid's vulnerability to cold weather. Federal regulators had warned Texas about it after a similar, smaller failure in 2011. The warning was not acted on. The grid has been partially reformed since 2021. It performed better in subsequent heat waves. Whether it can handle another extreme cold event is a question Texas residents and grid operators are still working through. The no-income tax advantage is largest for high earners. Someone making $500,000 a year saves around $30,000 annually by living in Texas instead of California. That saving easily absorbs the property tax gap, the higher insurance premiums, and the sales tax difference. The total tax burden is genuinely lower and meaningfully so. For someone making $80,000 a year, the picture is different. The income tax saving in California on that salary is around $3,500. The property tax on a median Texas home runs about $4,100 annually. Those two numbers roughly cancel each other out before insurance, sales tax, or electricity costs are factored in. The advantage that looked obvious in the headline number is much smaller in the actual calculation. Renters get the worst of it. They don't benefit from the property tax comparison at all. Their landlord pays it and passes it through in the rent. They pay the full sales tax rate on everything they buy. They pay Texas electricity rates on a grid that has failed catastrophically once in recent memory. And they're insured by a market that has become one of the most expensive in the country. The calculation most people run before moving to Texas starts and ends with the income tax. 0 versus 5, 7, 9%. The number is real, and for the right income level, it matters. What the calculation tends to leave out is that Texas made up the difference somewhere else. Property taxes rank among the highest in the country. Sales taxes hit 8.25% in every major city. Homeowners insurance has doubled since 2019. And the electricity grid that powers it all operates on a design that regulators warned was vulnerable to extreme cold over a decade before it failed. Whether Texas makes sense depends on what you earn, whether you rent or own, where in the state you land, and what you expect from the infrastructure around you. The people who moved in 2018 for cheap housing got something the people arriving now are paying a different price for. The no-income tax pitch is true. The total cost of living in Texas is a more complicated number. Thank you for watching.